welcome to another episode of Talk with Renee Dalo. I'm here this week with someone very special that I have known for a very long
We
time,
have known each other
Miss
for a
Heather.
very long time.
Those moments where I feel like I don't know what I'm doing or like I don't ever feel new anymore, but there's still those moments, right? I have to
Yeah.
remind myself that like I have been around for a long time. And then I have a guest like you who I'm like, you knew me when I was a baby business
Yep.
owner.
I know. It's fun though. It's fun to be able to chat again, and again and again and again and see the path that we've taken.
Yeah. When you hosted the Savvy experience?
Yeah.
Yeah. What year was that? 27
2016.
16. So y'all,
Mhm.
Heather hosted a beautiful, I mean, honestly, top-notch conference back in 2016 that
Mm.
I attended as back then I was only, and I'll use that word legitimately, I was only a wedding planner.
Yeah. You
And
were.
I mean, I think I was one of the only wedding planners in the room. It was really for like online entrepreneurs and copywriters and amazing creative women. And I remember sitting there thinking, I don't know if any of this is gonna pertain to me now, but one day I might need this. And when I
Yeah.
tell you that I go back to that workbook a lot, a
I
lot.
love that. I love that. Yeah, it's interesting to me that how many people come back to me and say, I wanted to go or I did go to that and how it really and also me just seeing not only my path and what's, transpired since then, but also everyone that attended. And I'm not saying like it's just cool to have that part in it. Like you were
Yeah,
just a dot in it, and that's
yeah,
okay.
yeah,
But to see everybody's like journey has
yeah.
been really amazing.
I mean, so many amazing women came out of that I met at that conference are now doing big, amazing things in the world. And like there are
Yeah.
relationships that I made there that I still have to this day. So like anytime someone's like, I don't know, we should go to that conference. I'm like, go to the conference, y'all. Like,
Yes.
go,
Yes.
go.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
when you go to a good conference and it's hosted well and it's, really thought through,
yeah,
even if it's not, the most beautiful even, it's the networking, the people that you get to meet
yeah.
can really be a pivoting point, right, for you to
Yeah,
just meet those people.
yeah. Well, and that's
Yeah.
a great segue. Thank you for that very elegant segue into what we're talking about today.
That wasn't intentional, but there it was.
There it was, which is like transitional points in life, like pivoting points in life. Now, I mean, I know your story, but for everyone listening, like you have had some very major pivots the last, I don't know, what, 5, 6, 7 years? How long has it
I
been?
mean, honestly, pivoting since I started.
Right.
So, a quick rundown of the pivots. So, I went to law school. I was a business major. I went to law school, right? My goal was to own a law firm. Always wanted to be an entrepreneur since I was really little, but I wanted to own a law firm. And so I went to law school. The last year of my law school, it was 2001. My dad passed away suddenly at the age of 44. I was 23-ish at that time. He passed away from having a heart attack. And it was a pivotal moment in my life because I had to do a really like, what do I want? And that's hard to do when you're 23
Your
years
frontal
old.
lobe isn't even totally developed yet. My gosh.
Yeah, it was really so that was like moment number 1. It was 2 days before my birthday. A month later, September 11th happened. So all these things happened at once, and I was in law school in Oklahoma City where I don't have any family, and because I'm from Indiana originally, and I was there like, what the hell am I doing with my life? Because I love the education of law, but then what happened when I got into the practice of it, I did not like it. And at that time, there weren't a lot of jobs as attorneys. And people think, oh, an attorney, you're getting paid so much. And I wasn't. Like my husband and I are both attorneys. I actually met my husband in law school. We've been together now for almost 20 years. So
Wow.
I always say law school brought me an amazing education. It brought me a wealth of knowledge. It also brought me my husband. So
Well, God bless
but
you.
it brought me a lot of heartache, and it was such a transitional time for me. So pivoting really started at that moment for me.
Oh yeah.
And I think I learned lessons at that time that most people had not had to. I don't want to say, let me just back up. Not most people. a lot of people at the age of 23 had not had to experience yet. And so I had to grow up really quickly and figure out also what I wanted for me, because what I realized is that was my father's dream. He didn't get to go to college. My mom didn't get to go to college. They just came from my dad from a very large family. That was his dream. And it wasn't mine. I always wanted an education. I wanted to go to college. And I'm so glad I went to law school. So it's helped me in so many ways in business school. But I realized that this was not going to be my path. It just did not fill my cup up. And I knew I wanted a family as I, not right away, but I knew I wanted a family. And I was like, I can't imagine I'm already working like 70, 80-hour weeks. I
Right.
can't continue to do this. This
Where do
doesn't,
you fit a family into that life? You don't.
yeah. Yeah, and so, and then of course at that time too, I was the only female. I was the youngest person at the firm. I was the only female in the firm, and that was very challenging. No one was mean to me or rude. It was just you felt kind of where you were, and I have never been good with that. So I was like, this is not going to work out this way, and
Yep.
so I kind of challenged things, and then eventually it was just like, this is not for me, and so that's when I got into the wedding planning world and event planning. And I was like, I have $400 to use. I, didn't have any money
Yeah.
because I wasn't making hardly any money and I wasn't allowed to do that from law school. So I took my $400 that I had. I bought a Dell computer. I'm showing my age here. Like, this is a long time ago, y'all. This is like, I've been an entrepreneur for 20 years.
Yeah.
I started the event planning business with no knowledge, in a city that I knew no one, and I just was like, I'm gonna make it happen. And I
Yeah.
think that was one of the things I learned from my dad was like, you're gonna make it work. You're gonna figure it out. It might
Yep.
not be easy, but you're gonna figure it out. You have the capacity to do that. You have the knowledge to do that. So that's what I did. So that was my first pivot.
The entrepreneurial, like, motto is, "I'll figure it out." Like,
Yeah.
does we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out, and
Yeah.
I still say that to my husband to this day. I'm like, "We'll figure it out. We'll work it out. We'll
Yeah.
figure it out, whatever it is," you know?
So then 6 years into that, I had grown the business here in Phoenix, Arizona. And I was like I had just had London, my oldest, and I was like, I can't go on like this. I can't be doing all of this.
Yeah.
And I had people that had helped me, like associates, but like part time,
Mhm.
So I had a client that came in and she was amazing and I did her wedding. And then she was like, hey, I'd like to get into this. And she ended up buying half my company and became my business partner. And we ran that for almost another 6 years, and we
Wow.
grew the team. And during that time, I was getting asked a lot, how did you do all this? Like, this is a lot. At that time, it was very
Yeah.
new to have a business
Mhm.
partner or even have teams, honestly. It wasn't,
Well, and
it
even
wasn't,
back then, like, the amount of education that we have now in the wedding industry, like, didn't exist back then. Like, I want
did
everyone
not
to
exist
really,
at all.
like, hear this. When I started and when Heather especially when Heather started, we did not have webinars, we did not have YouTube channels, we did not have, social media the way people are just giving out.
No,
No, podcasts, no, there was nothing, you guys. We were learning
no.
how to plan weddings from a binder,
Yeah.
remember?
Yes. And I mean, most of it was just, again, learning on the job.
On the
I had
job.
no idea. And I was in a luxury market and I did not grow up with wealth. So it was
Same.
all very like, I'm in this world that I don't know, I've never known, and I had to learn so much going through it. But as we were going through it, people would start to ask us, how are you doing this and all that. And so that's when my coaching and like consulting started, because people in the wedding industry and event industry were asking me, and that's I started speaking a lot. And so then we sold the business in 2014 because I just felt that was my calling. I had went to business school, I had went to law school, and I had always I knew I wanted to own a business, but being an event planner for 11 years was not part of the plan.
That was a that was a detour.
Huge. What I love about it, I learned so much about operating a business,
Yeah,
obviously. I started to coach and consult with people. I also it really fed into my creative soul
yeah,
that being an attorney did not allow for.
right. Yeah.
So the two then kind of merged back together where I was like, I want to be able to work with people that understand this, like, and I understand them in this creative capacity, but I want to do the business stuff because that's what I'm really good at. I know it really well. And I was helping people do it and get results, great results.
Yeah.
So, a friend of mine, the first client I had, who you know, Eliana Bossicult, she
Oh my god. Ellie B in the house.
LEB as events is what most people know her as. We have been friends forever, and she was my first client. And if you don't know her, she does amazing celebrity events and just like
She's
one of the
amazing.
most amazing event planners. I was happy to like be able to help her, and she paid me at the time was like a great bit of money for to do that. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay. And so that was like the second pivot, right, into coaching and consulting. And then when we sold the business, so that was 2010, 2014, we sold the business, and I went fully into coaching consulting. I did one-on-one, I then did courses, I did a group programs, and
Mhm.
then I did the Savvy Experience, which was
Right.
the conference. After that, I launched another group program. And in the January after that, I launched a membership
Mhm.
and had about 350 people in a membership. And so all that launched. And then another not so fun pivot happened. My daughter was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer,
And that was in
literally the month afterwards.
2017?
2017, and I launched the membership. I launched the program at the end of 2016 after the conference, and then I
Yep.
launched the membership in January 2017, and February 2017 is when she was diagnosed.
And I remember the day that you were public about it, because
Yeah.
I was on a plane going somewhere, and I was looking at my Facebook in the group, and you posted something in the group, and I was like, "Whoa, what?" And then, like, of course, it was like, "Turn off your phones," because you have to go
Yeah.
fly, and I was like the whole flight, I just kept thinking about you and London and your family, and just just so thrown because like you just said, it was such an upward momentum for you, and
Yeah.
then you get
I was
this
at
new.
the peak of my business for sure
For
at that
sure,
time.
for
Yeah.
sure.
And the interesting thing was the at the conference, another person that we know
That's right.
mutually,
Yes, Sarah.
her son, Sarah, was diagnosed with stage
Same,
4 neuroblastoma, the same cancer that
same.
London ended up being diagnosed with that
Just a
February.
few months before
And she
London.
was supposed to come to the conference, and she didn't
Right.
end up coming because he was diagnosed, obviously. So
Yeah.
refunded her all the money. And then we did like a huge thing to support
Yep.
him. And
Yeah.
so that all happened. And then, that changed our life financially, mentally, physically, like everything changed at that moment.
Yeah. So before we get into the London pivot, which
Yeah.
I definitely want to talk about, you
Yeah.
mentioned in the telling of the story like two times you said, "Well, I couldn't do this anymore, so I knew it was time to go." Do you
Mm.
remember like what that felt like in your body, in your mind? Like, because I know a lot of people listening are like, in the wedding industry, kind of a toe out of the wedding industry, thinking about what their next act is. Like, was there something pulling you? How did you know, or did you not know
Yeah.
went into action anyway?
So I think with law school, I think I would have been an attorney and gone on to be an amazing attorney had the moment with my dad not happened, and then
Yeah,
September 11th happened. So
yeah,
that was like definitely personal, like it felt it. It was a turn upside down kind of
yeah.
feeling. I think when it came to selling the wedding planning business, I just felt that I couldn't give any more to it. And honestly, it was a lot of weekends. When we sold, I was pregnant
Mm,
right before with my second child. But I don't know. I guess it was that just gut feeling of,
yeah,
and I knew before. Here's the thing, I knew before, and I stayed longer because this will tell you something about my personality. I'm a little bit of a people pleaser sometimes. And I was like, I don't want to hurt people's feelings. I had a business partner
yeah,
who bought into this thinking this was
yeah,
going to be ours together for a very long time. And I also, the other big thing for me was I became aware of online business.
yeah.
And so I did at the time, back in the day, I did Marie Forleo's B School, and
Yep.
that really changed everything for me. And I opened up a whole new world that I wasn't aware of. And so that was really the other big pivot for me of the reason of like what when I felt it was right, because I did the education before, and then I was like, okay, after I got that, I was like, oh,
Yeah,
I love this. Like there's so much opportunity. I could help so many people.
yeah.
and it was going to fit within the lifestyle that I wanted. I wasn't going to have to be at weddings every weekend. Even with the team, we were
It's still giving,
still
yeah,
it's still you're a lot in it. So I stayed a few years longer than I actually wanted to because I loved running the business. I loved running the event planning business. I
right.
did not like doing the weddings anymore.
So, okay, so let's go back to period of time when London was diagnosed.
Yeah.
Obviously a pivot that no one saw coming.
No.
How did you untangle from all those things?
Yeah. So interestingly enough, I didn't get rid of anything or do anything differently at first.
Yeah.
It was like, okay. So the one thing that did happen was at that February was the end of the 6-month group coaching program that I had done. So after the at the conference, I sold their group coaching program, and so we were just ending that in March the next month. And I gave everyone. I only missed one call, and at the time I wore it as a badge of honor, like I'm only missing one call and I'm still making all this stuff happen for my kids and my daughter, and then my son is fourth time, and
Yeah.
my husband and I are working a lot, and our life became hospital.
Yeah.
Just that's what it was. We were in the hospital all the time. So we really, I had to really like look at everything that I had and go, what can stay, what needs to go. And so the program was wrapping up. I had 20 people in the program. I had one person that was not happy that I did not show up for the one call and then I was ending. And so I was glad to. It was really, really hard. It's one of those moments where you're like, okay, people are really showing their
I was like, that says a lot about whoever that person is. That's all
yeah,
I'll
and,
say about that.
here's the thing, nothing on her, because if she was ever hear this, she knows who she is, but at the period she was in her life at that moment, it makes sense of
Yeah.
why that was happening. She
Yeah.
wasn't in the best place in her life and her
Right.
business, and so it makes sense for me now. At the
Yeah.
time, it was devastating to
Oh, I'm
me
sure.
as a Enneagram 2, like, helper, I just wanna help people, and then it was like to my
Yeah.
heart of like,
Yeah.
"What? You did just hear that my daughter was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, right?" So, I ended that and we got everything fulfilled for that, so that was good. And then, the membership I kept on, I think, for a year and a half.
Mhm.
And I just knew that it needed to go after, at the end of that, probably like a year and, a few months in, I was like, okay, this isn't working out. It
Yeah.
was just requiring too much of my time. I think a lot of times people think that memberships are going to be something that you just create and then it's easy. And
No. No. As
no,
someone who
it's
has a
not.
membership, who has been running a membership since March, I can tell you it
Yes.
is the most work I've ever done, but I'm happy to do it. But it is not this
Yes.
like set it and forget it. No, no,
No,
no, no.
but it was sold back in the day, and I still think now, as a way to like passive income, have your
Yes.
community. And and then it's like at that time, and this is, I think, something different in memberships. I don't think they need to give the kitchen sink, but at that time everybody was pitching it as like, give it all, and
Yes.
only charge $57 a month for it. And I was like,
That's right.
this isn't working out. So I don't know, something's gonna change. So I could have probably sold that, but I just wasn't in the headspace of being able to do that.
Yeah.
So I just let that go. I honestly, I would love to do it again. I love community, and that's how my
I love
business
her.
started. When I started this coaching business, I started it with a Facebook group and
You
grew
had
it to like,
that your Facebook group was the bomb back in the
it
day.
was so amazing
It
because
was
it
such
felt
a
it
fun
was a
group.
good place to go. If you felt
Mhm.
it was helpful, people were
Yes.
like in it together. And it was a special place, and I still get people to today to that will hire me or find me, and they're like, I remember you back in the day with your
Yep.
Facebook
We had
group. That's
savvy
where I first
meetups.
met you.
Remember we had savvy meetups? It was so
Yeah, we used to have,
fun.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
we used to do
fun.
all those things, which was amazing at the time. It just, but we needed to pivot in the way that we ran things. But eventually I was like, this isn't sustainable for what our family needs.
Yeah.
We were spending a lot of time, London was, at the first year we went through two stem cell transplants. 2 surgeries. I don't even know how many rounds of chemotherapy. That was just the first year. She probably did 100 over her 6 years rounds. And during the stem cell transplants, we were in isolation in the hospital where no one could come in. Obviously, this was all before COVID, but still,
Right.
no one. It was kind of like that in the sense that I tell people that we were wearing masks before mask was cool, right? So,
Yeah.
because we started wearing them then, So anyway, all that really I think, and this is why I like to talk. This is why I like to talk about it around the business aspect because it was a season and it was an ongoing season. Like I wish it would have just been a season and it was a
Right.
season after season after season. And so each season I would see, okay, where are we at with her and our kids? Now we have 3 kids, but at that time, where are we at? And then where are my husband and I at? And where do I want to be? And how much energy did I have? Because as a mother, I was a lot of and like I wanted my energy to go to her
Of
and
course.
my son at the
Of
time.
course. Yeah.
So I wouldn't change anything, but we did have to shift for
Yeah.
sure. Not
Yeah.
even a question.
So that brings us to today, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. In February, London passed away. Um Unexpectedly. We were not expecting it. We were basically given notice in January that she had probably 2 weeks and she passed away after a week and a half. And so it was a rapid decline, and we had no idea. We were not prepared. We had never even talked about any of that because it never was we
Right.
never thought it was going to happen.
Well,
Like
she had
it
been in
wasn't,
remission so many times.
yeah, she'd been in remission. We were doing better. And what happened was we went back in January to have her 3-month scan. She would get scans every 3 months for 6 years. And she had been doing a oral chemotherapy. And at that time, they told us that it had covered her whole body again. And it was basically like we were on that first day of diagnosis where it covered her whole body and there was nothing else we could do.
Wow.
And yeah, she was our best friend. So it's been a huge, again,
Huge.
transition
Yeah.
and pivoting. And it's this interesting thing that I tell people about that it has opened up so much space for myself in terms of space on my calendar.
Yeah.
But then you have all the
Yeah.
grief that
All
goes
the
with
grief.
that.
Right.
The reason
All the grief. Right.
So therapy has always been a big part of my life. Well, I say the big part of my life for the past 5 years.
Yeah.
And with business and life, I would just, I was going to therapy regularly. I go to every week, or I do online, but we
Yeah.
do every week therapy.
Same.
And I think that's been a
Same.
big, yeah,
Yeah.
that's been a big thing that I've used to help get through it. But it's also, my husband and I talk about it as it's another chapter of our lives. And is it one that we wanted? Is this how we would have written it? No. But this is the cards we were dealt. And we have, 2 other children. And that was a whole other thing. 2019, I got pregnant unexpectedly at the age of 43, which I was not planning on. And London was in remission again. So we
Yeah.
were in remission. We had a baby. I was homeschooling both kids.
Oh, right. Because of
Um,
COVID.
yeah, we moved and COVID was happening and we were back in the hospital doing all the things, radiation, chemotherapy, all the things again.
Yeah.
So that was like a whole nother pivot of like, and I actually took a break from taking on clients that year. I still had all my clients that I was working with one-on-one, but I didn't take any on. And that, can I just say, was a huge pivotal moment because I realized that my identity was so wrapped up in being an entrepreneur.
Well, that's so funny, Heather, because I was going to ask you that. Like, at what point or did you ever have a point where you were like, well, where am I now? Where am I, Heather, now in
Yeah.
this scenario?
Yeah, a lot of times. But that year in 2020, I was like, I can't be superwoman. Like, I
Right.
am not
Right.
for all of this. Like, and
Yeah.
of course, my husband was here, very, very
Yes.
supportive. We are like 50-50 partners. But with all that was going on, it was just too much. And I was like, I don't want to give my business up, but I can't take on anybody. And so I had people that were in a program and I was doing that. And then I had one-on-one consulting clients I was working with. And I had to step back and It was interesting because I thought, I'm still working the whole time. It wasn't like I
Right,
quit working. I just
right.
slowed down and I didn't take on any new clients. But
Well, and I'll say
that
from the outside, you also stopped promoting, and that's why I think people were like, "Well, what's Heather been up to? What?" I mean, we haven't seen a lot of Heather. It's like we're doing the work privately behind the scenes. We're just not launching every 5 minutes, so you don't see
no.
it, the visibility. It feels
Yeah.
different to people just watching.
Yeah, because I didn't have the energy, I didn't have the
Yeah, of
bandwidth to be
course.
able to be on Instagram all the time, and honestly, when I was, it became a lot about London, and as she
Yeah,
was turning into a teenager, I was very protective of her and obviously wanted her to have a voice in all of it, as even when
yeah,
she was 9, when she was diagnosed, I was always very aware, like, this is her life, and I'm her mom. And so I can tell my story as the mom, but like I often also have to honor her story and her voice
yeah,
as a person that's actually going through it. And
yeah,
so we were very clear on that from the beginning. And as she was getting older, I could just see that it was like, maybe I don't want to share everything, mom.
yeah.
And so it was hard because that was so much of my day. That was
Right.
basically all of my day. And then in between, I would do calls at the hospital, and I would do Slack messages, and I was still running the program and still doing the stuff. But that was a huge shift because it just felt like because I wasn't marketing, I didn't have all that extra stuff that I needed to do. And I talk about it in my podcast that it was such a huge identity shift for me. And I had to separate myself from being an entrepreneur. And so what I found is like I had stopped asking what Heather needs. I was just giving to everyone else,
Yeah,
my clients, my spouse, my kids. And there was nothing left over for me.
yeah.
And I was just like, this is not good.
And I said it's not sustainable for you at all. I mean,
No,
how long can you run like
no.
that before you're like, "Well, wait a minute. Wait a minute."
Yeah, and I hit the age at 44 when my dad passed away, and
Oh,
that was a pivotal moment for me too, because I was like, because this is after I just had this is all during the same time,
right, you just
and
had
I was
last
just like, "I can't do this. Like, I am literally going to kill myself." In the terms of like running myself
Yeah,
to do all the things,
yeah,
stressed out from all the things, and expect I and here's the thing, it was nobody else telling me I had to do all of it. It
right.
was this it was this picture I had built that this is who I am, and without this segment of it, I was not me.
Yep,
And it wasn't that I wasn't worth, because I've always like felt very confident about myself and self-worth. That has never really been an issue. But what it felt like is without the work stuff, like what am I doing with my time, and what and then I was like, "Oh, Heather, what do you actually want to do with your time?"
right, right.
It was just so it was like one of these, whoa, mind-blowing experiences for me, and I'm like, at 44, I'm going through this. I'm just now learning this, and I
Yeah,
think I've done it before. I've had such these, like, pivotal shifts and things that have happened in my life
yeah,
that it felt like doing it again, and I was like, "Okay, it's gotta be different." And I think also the thing was I was during this whole time, I was observing what was going on in the online space,
well,
and
that's
I
what I was
wasn't.
gonna say too. We're really unhooking a lot from the hustle culture in these last couple of years where when you and I started, I mean, I have a poster here in the corner. It says, "Good things happen to those who hustle."
Yeah.
Now, I bought that in 2014, y'all. Like, that's what we were taught.
Yeah, yeah. And I felt like I had let the hustle go many,
Yeah,
many, many years ago, but I will say that I had to still do a lot of unlearning in the last, I would say, 4 years of what the online space had essentially taught me,
yeah,
about how you have to run a business. And I
yeah,
think there are so many things, obviously, that have been left out.
yeah,
And I just was like, okay, I don't use get you to 6 figures or 7 figures. I don't really use money as a way to bring people in, because the people that I work with, does money matter? Yes, of course. But it's usually not the driver for them.
right.
And people that I work with have been in business for, over 5 years. And so they're wanting different things. Their goals and stuff are different than just making a certain figure. And that doesn't mean that everyone's made that 6 or 7 figure. I just think that our value of what success is doesn't doesn't stand on that anymore.
I totally agree.
And yeah. So yeah, so much like unraveling
Yeah,
that I had to do and go, okay, again, hey, let's take this apart and what does this mean? And I think what helped me through it is I'm a learner. So I felt at first it was a little bit of a shock, but I've been learning all my life. And so for me, it doesn't feel like I'm not worthy because I don't know that or this or whatever.
right, you're able to just be curious about it without having to be like, "Well, I'm so dumb for not knowing." I also think
Yeah.
there's something so I mean, I relate to the thing about like, okay, well, who am I now? What am I like? What am I calling myself? Right. For the first
Yeah.
time, I was putting together a speaker kit a couple of literally days ago, and I was writing, the title, my name, and then underneath like my titles, and I didn't put wedding planner for the first time. I didn't know, I didn't realize
Oh,
I didn't put it, and so
yeah.
I just I made it, and I showed my husband, and he's like, "You didn't put wedding planner," and I was like, "Oh my, oh, I
Mhm.
didn't wedding planner." And that was one of those, like, moments because it's like, that has been my identity for over a decade, still
Yeah.
part of who I am, but it is
Yep.
not the first thing that comes to mind when someone says, "Renee, what do you do?"
Yep.
And that is a transitional point too, especially for anyone
Mhm.
listening who's, like, wondering what their next act is, like, just kind of removing yourself from that title you gave yourself
Yeah.
or the world gave you, whatever it
Yeah.
is, can be really freeing, but also scary.
Yeah, oh, for sure. I mean, I felt that going from attorney to event planner, and
Yep.
for a while I would say, "I'm an event planner, but I have a law degree." And then I was like, "Wait, what do I gotta say that for?" You
Right,
know? People would
right.
look at me and talk to me differently when I did, and then I thought, "I don't really give a shit." Like, you're gonna like me for what I do or don't. I don't need that as it. Is that
Right,
part of what I do and who I
yes.
am? Yes, but that's not me. And if I need that tag on there for you to validate me, then I don't really want to be around you or work with you.
Right,
So
right.
I think I learned that early on, which was a gift for me,
Yeah,
because then it allowed me to pivot without worrying about what everyone else thought, or
right.
so
Because
I
that's
thought.
part of it all
I
this
say,
too.
yeah, I
Like,
say that, but I will say moving from attorney to event planner was really difficult. Moving from like event planning world to coaching, I think was really easy. Well, not easy, but it was easier for me.
yeah,
And then I think when in the last couple of years, it's been really difficult for me. And let me tell you why. Because what you said, Heather stopped marketing and I wasn't showing up in all the places. And I was everywhere before, like Facebook,
yeah,
Instagram. I was every podcast, like doing all
yeah,
the things.
yeah,
And then I sat back and thought, okay, but what's the most important to me?
right.
And what do I need in order to sustain my business and the life that I really want to live? And I thought, if I'm going to walk the walk and not just talk the talk, that means I have to prioritize what I'm saying I want to prioritize. And that was my family. And
Absolutely.
so marketing, a lot of it I gave up. And so now it's hard for me because I almost have like this thing on my shoulder of like, ugh, I got an email and I got an Instagram and I got a
Now I
LinkedIn
gotta
and
market.
I gotta do all this stuff again. Like,
Yeah,
what? I
yeah,
love it. I do. I love it. I think part of it is that grieving that I'm still
of
attaching
course.
to why I have that availability to do that. I think that's a big part of it. But I
Yeah,
also think that we get to a point where we feel like, or I will say this is what's happening, and I bet a lot of people can relate to this. When you've been in business for a while, and even if you've been in business for a year or two, but I've been in business for almost 20 years, and I think I thought, well, I thought I would be somewhere different. This is not where I thought I would be right now.
yeah,
And then I would get angry because I'm like, I saw some of my friends who were doing all these things and they were everywhere. And I was like, yeah, but your daughter didn't get stage 4 cancer,
right.
asshole. I wasn't saying that, but that was the feelings I was having. And
Right.
that's not my nature to be even like, I don't even get angry really. But I just was like, okay, well, this is telling what's going on. And again, I had to unlearn these things that have been taught to us of like,
Right.
if you're not doing all the things, you're not worthy of being a business owner.
Right.
And I think that, sometime when you're in integrity with things, you will lose business to people that they only want to hear you say you're going to help them get to seven figures or that you're going to do certain things.
Yep.
And so I'm okay with that losing that business. That's
Yeah.
what I've come to terms with.
Yeah.
I'm okay with losing all that business because those people were not meant for me.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to enjoy working with them because they just don't understand or
Yeah.
haven't had to understand the world in a certain way. Maybe I don't know. I'm not
Right,
sure.
well, it's just not everything is not just, it's not aligned in that way, like, values aren't aligned there,
Yeah,
clearly. But what's
yeah,
interesting too, and I wonder how I think I know how you feel about this, but worth saying. So I have a friend, not Sarah, another friend whose child was very ill, who owns a business in
mhm,
New York, and
mhm,
she kinda did the same. She sort of stopped marketing her services. She's not in the wedding industry. And,
yeah,
and then she decided at some point in his illness to start again, and
yeah,
people would comment, "What do you like, why what are you doing posting recipes today? Aren't"
yeah,
and it was like, okay, so she can't run her business because her child is sick, but then the opposite, like, so what do you want for, like, I think it's such a
yeah,
double-edged sword. No matter what you do, someone's probably gonna say something, so you have to do what's right for you, I think is what I took from that. Because I felt she was, like,
yeah,
wanting to work to for the distraction, and then her work happens to be very public visible, and people were like,
yeah.
what are you doing trying to work?" And it's like,
Oh yeah.
what am I supposed to do? Yeah.
I got a little bit of that. I think my community was pretty like great and has been. And that's been, I will say that's one of the things, having built a community of people. And it's interesting. I still get weird about this because I'm like, it's not my community. It's just the community that
You built
I
it.
I mean, I let it, but I really was through the whole time. We also had other people that were like, leaders with ambassadors in my community. And yeah, I have a part of that. And I'm not, disregarding that. But I think sometimes when I hear about my community and I'm just like, yeah, but we're all people in it. So acknowledge us as people in it and that you, we need you, you need us, right?
Yeah,
So it's not just yours. So
yeah,
anyway, whole thing around that. But I think what allowed me to get through some of that, a lot of that is having that community that we had built online and in person and feeling that, I was a person that I did share. I was pretty open about everything that would happen. I've cried on Instagram more than most people. And I've, had these joyous occasions where we would celebrate online. I think through it all, though, it is a challenge. And I think, especially as a woman and a mom, it gets even harder because there's expectations that are already out there that you're this or that and whatever. And I just had to like let that go. Like people are going to think what they think. And I know my heart and I know that I'm doing what's best for my children and what's best for the people that either are working with me or want to work with me.
yeah,
And if you don't align with that, that's okay. But there are a lot of people that do. And so I know for me, it was a huge healing factor for me when I could work because it did distract me, but it also let me feel like I was giving to something because when you're in that, there's a period, parts of it where it feels everyone wants to give to you.
yeah,
We were very lucky and that there was a lot of people that wanted to help and that were always showing up, especially that first year. And I felt, again, this is a weird thing I'm doing therapy for, but it's this weird thing. I felt like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I was like overwhelmed with all the willingness to help. And I was like, I
yeah,
just want to help. I want to give
yeah,
back. And
right.
so, yeah. And so that was really healing for me to be able to work during that time for sure.
No,
So
I
I say for anybody that's in that position, like, no judgment. I don't know, no judgment regardless, but
agree.
it's just do what you got to do.
Yeah, it's interesting. We did an episode on grief and entrepreneurship about a year
Mm.
ago. Because I lost my cousin in in the scheme. I mean, I know we can't, like, you know
No, there's no
we cannot rate each other's trauma, but I
no,
will say
no.
my cousin was like a brother to me, and he
Yeah,
passed away very suddenly from a drug overdose. I didn't even know he was doing drugs. So it was all very shocking, sudden, happened in the middle of the night. That you get the phone call that you don't expect to get, and you're like, what is happening to my life? Me being
Yeah.
Enneagram 3 and being who I am, I had a 9 AM meeting the next morning and I went to it. I took
Yeah.
0 time off to grieve. I pushed my way through the end of 2018 into 2019, and it wasn't until I made some very poor choices at the during that real, like, I should not have been working, right? Those
Yeah.
days following or, like, weeks following, I should have just taken a beat, but I didn't because 'cause I'm me. And I've been unpacking that in therapy for a while, but as someone who worked through the grief, I think there's like there's like a happy medium there that I didn't quite tend to find because what I was doing for the wedding planning business specifically is I don't remember some of these consult calls that I took and booked. So clients that I'd be working with and I would like forget to onboard, like basic shit that I should
Mhm.
know better. My
Yeah.
brain just literally was not online. And
Yeah.
so therefore there was like a year of this horrible, horrible client relationship that I never would have taken had I been literally in my right mind. So I feel
Yeah.
like there was definitely a sweet spot. And I think that was like I think that looking back, like that was a little like a traumatic thing that I was pushing
Yeah.
through, which was dumb. Don't do that, everybody. Take a
No,
minute.
but I do agree. I that happened when I didn't have the business at the time, but after my dad passed away and I started my business, I was doing that. Like I didn't stop to grieve. I was in my early 20s and I was just
Yeah,
like, "No, go through." And 14 years later, I ended up starting therapy for it because I was like, it never went away. Like I
right,
never processed any of it and it
right.
all came back. And so
Yeah,
I have this feeling of like not that I needed that, but like that really helped me
yeah,
in this and with London because I had experienced all that before. And what
yeah.
I knew is that I didn't want that to happen and I
Right.
needed to process it as I went through, you know.
Literally lessons learned, like lessons learned from your
Yeah,
own
big time
life.
lessons. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
and for me too, like when if the next person I lose, like I know more now about myself and how I think I'm coping when I'm not actually coping.
Yeah.
Where would you say you are now in the pivot? Is it time for another Heather pivot? Have you pivoted?
So I am actually back to what I love doing, and that's working with people one on one. I do have like some digital products that will be coming out more,
Nice.
and
Oh, and you have the digital magazine, which I love. Talk about the magazine.
yeah. So yeah, I have my Business Minded, my digital magazine, which kind of just started out as a passion project. I just wanted to do something like creative and fun,
Yeah,
and combine community with it.
yeah,
And because that's something I felt during these past few years, especially the last couple years, I really didn't have the capacity or bandwidth to really have any kind of community. It
yeah,
was just me and my husband and our kids and our
yeah,
immediate family. In fact, that's all we saw. We had to be so isolated because
yeah.
of London being sick that not only we had COVID, but then we had her being ultimately sick and
Mm,
we could not be around anyone. And so that was a whole other pivot, a whole other
yeah,
isolation I'm still working through of like,
yeah,
wow, so community, I wanted that community, that sense of community back. And like
yeah,
I wasn't having like, I didn't do coffee chats, I didn't do anything, and
yeah,
I went from one extreme to the other
yeah,
and kind of like a little hermit, like not doing anything. And I was like, "Okay, what can I do that, that would like fill my cup, but that would still be something I could do for my business?"
yeah.
And, so the business digital magazine came about, and I think it'll
It's
be
so
something
pretty,
that
by the way. I love the
Oh, thank
layout. It's so
you.
pretty. Yeah,
Yeah, but let me share a little bit about it in terms of why I think it works,
yeah,
because it wasn't just a side project. So what we do is we have the podcast and we do interviews right there. So those people then they get to be in the magazine.
nice.
So it's cool exposure for them. And they get to be on the podcast and they get to be on the magazine. We also put them in the blog. And so it's all like this little ecosystem. It also like allows me to share products that and people and really my heart is with I'm a connector. I'm like a super connector.
Yep. Yes,
And
you are.
so yeah, and so it allows me to showcase people that I know in a way that's just like it also is good for my business too because it connects me with them and I get to like have chats with people which felt really good.
Yeah,
But then we take from their podcast, we take and like we'll take a part of it and maybe they did like 5 steps or five, something, 3 tips or something. And we will then write that for them for the blog. And then that the written piece also becomes a part of the magazine. It's just this
Nice.
cool
I
little
love
thing
that.
that happens. Yeah. And then it also sells my services. So yeah, I do one-on-one consulting and for growth strategies. So it's an ongoing, but some people might call it a retainer, but it's like a subscription service for consulting.
For you.
So
Yeah.
it's a cancel at any time kind of deal and you just pay monthly. And I just found that I love deep relationships. So it's really hard for me even to sell something I found out about myself. It's really hard for me. Like when I was doing courses, it was really hard because I felt like I didn't connect with those people as much.
Yeah.
And when
Yeah.
I tried to, I was like, "Oh, I'm giving like so much time and energy for something that,
Yeah.
I'm not
No,
being compensated for."
I feel that
So
100%. Yeah.
yeah, so figuring out like I do run your success squad, which is I call it a thrive mind for people. And so everyone that I serve have been in business for a while, at least
Yeah.
5 years. I would say the majority of them anywhere from 8 to 12 years. And because of that, those people need kind of a deeper dive. They're kind of over the being in programs and doing courses and all that stuff. They want someone that's going to be kind of their, I say I'm your business consultant in your back pocket.
Yeah.
And they just to get the call on me. And then I kind of just, I'm okay with being behind the scenes, honestly. So
Yeah.
most of my business has been me up
Yeah.
front. It's about
Yes.
Heather. And it is still built like that, I guess. But I just want to be able to get behind the scenes and like figure out ways to grow a sustainable business. And a lot of the people that I work with relate to me because I've done all those pivots, right? And so
Yeah.
when they're pivoting, I'm able
Yes.
to like understand on a certain level
Well,
what that
you've
feels
walked the
like.
path, right? So you know that you know the road. You've been down the road.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
where
I
all the
mean,
tree points are.
yeah, we're still, and I think also again comes back to my like continual learner. I love learning and I'm always able to give a different perspective or say, "Hey, let's think about it this way." So yeah, I think that part is just leaning into your strengths because I am a connector. I am a deep relationship person because I really want the best for the people that I work with.
Yeah.
I am an Enneagram 2 with the 3 wings, so I love that achiever. I'm an achiever, but like I'm a helper. And so I think just leaning into all of those things, I've sometimes felt like they were, especially in the online world, something that was against me, kind of like, you got to do all the things. And then I
Yeah.
just thought like, no, I don't want to do it that way. I'm going to be in integrity with like my values.
Yeah. Well, you built
And
it your own way. You know what I mean? You
yeah,
built it your own way. If someone wanted to work with you, Heather, what's like the first what do they do? Reach out? Is it go to your
yeah.
website? What's the first step?
Yeah, just my website, heathercrabtree.com. I'm on Instagram at Heather Business Coach. But yeah, everything's on heathercrabtree.com.
Yeah, I have some questions about your self-care because we're big on
Yeah,
self-care around here.
yeah,
So I run a self-care membership for wedding pros where we talk about habits and just how to
love.
be a little bit, it's called better. So we always talk about how to be better a little bit at a time. Um,
Yeah.
do you have a particular like morning routine, like that miracle morning or anything you do daily that's like just for Heather?
I will say morning routines have never been available for me
Mm,
because our life has been just, I never
yeah,
knew what each day was going to bring.
yeah.
What helped me immensely was meditation.
Mm,
If it was 5 minutes and breath work. Those
yep,
2 things, I know that they kinda get glamorized and like, whatever put around them, but for me, even if I couldn't because there wasn't a lot of time,
yeah.
honestly, that I was without London being sick
Yeah,
or my other children, and so I was like, "Okay, I need time," and so just taking 5 to 10 minutes, the Calm app is what I used a
yeah,
lot. And it was just it really allowed me when I didn't have a lot of time, even now because I have a 3-year-old,
yeah,
space to just turn off my brain for a second because I think that it would just continue to my husband says the squirrels are running again, aren't they? And,
Yes,
yes,
the
they're
squirrels are
always
always
running.
running.
They're always
Um,
running.
and just because I know we're in a new year or at the end of the
Yeah.
year, depending on when people hear this, do you have anything you're really looking forward to in 2024?
I think just really this year was really a builder year for me again, and figuring out what I really wanted to be doing. And so this next year, I'm just really leaning into having a core group of clients that I help throughout the year, and help them grow their business in the way that really aligns with their life. And I think that's a big part of what I do is like we're not going off of anybody's playbook, right? We're going off of what works for you and really diving into your life and what you want and your seasons and that kind of stuff. And
Yeah,
then building it and growing it in a way that feels good, cuz you don't have to do all the strategies and all the things that people say you need to do. It's like what actually do you want to do and what feels good to you?
yeah.
And I'll be the person to tell you like, you don't got to do it all. And you probably will be more successful when you don't do it all, honestly. So,
100%. Ugh,
yeah.
Heather, I love you. I'm so glad we
I
got to
love you
chat.
too. I'm so glad we had this. It's like
We
good for
I
the
feel like
soul.
I know we need to do it in person over, like, some coffees. I would say
Yeah.
wine, but I don't drink anymore, so
Yeah, I'm down with coffee.
love it, love it, love it. Well, find Heather at Heather Crabtree. We're gonna put all of her links in the show notes so you can easily find Heather. And, thanks again, friend. It's so good to see you.
You too, friend. Thank you.